Hi there, I am the Utopian Trainer, and here we have another in the series of Utopian conversations that are taking place. So, as you may have seen already, but maybe you don't know, maybe you're a new watcher, I am having a conversation with all kinds of diverse people just to ask them about what kind of utopia they'd like to have. So I'm kind of building up some kind of utopian community. So if you want to be part of this, then click on the subscribe button that you can see there on my logo there. And I've worked out the right way to point. So today I have Philip. Philip, how are you doing?
Very well, thanks, Ian. Nice to see you.
Yeah. So Philip and we have a bit of a singing background with each other. Both of us were for a while singing in this choir called Wrocław Przeciw Rasizmowi, Wrocław Against Racism. And yeah, this was a nice little thing. There's only like more or less like four of us who were singing in the choir in the end, but we made some quite nice music, didn't we? Didn't we, Philip?
Yeah, hopefully, we can't we don't need to keep talking about it in the past tense.
Yeah.
Start it up again when all this pandemic stuff is over.
Exactly. Yeah. So you're a singer, Philip. Do you want to tell us a bit more about yourself?
Well, yes. I mean, basically, what do you want to know? Because it's quite a long story. I mean, I've been singing since I was very small. I started off as a choir boy, and I came from that kind of tradition. And I, as I moved forward with my musical and theatrical interests, I branched out into all sorts of music, and eventually ended up as a street performer,
Mm-hmm.
moving around Europe in my 20s, and performing in most countries in Europe. And this I found this an interesting way to actually explore the continent, and also to pay my way as well. So it was and that's never left me. It's developed. I've taken on other projects since, but it's always been part of the informal way I've made music and theatre, and yeah, it carries on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it's possible that you've been in different parts of Central Europe, including places like Görlitz and this, and that you may have actually seen, or have you sung in Berlin as well, Philip?
Oh yes. Not so much recently, but I used to actually when I travelled between the UK and Poland by train, which was I tend to do it by bus now, but I'd frequently stop in Berlin on the way, as that was usually a good spot to because you can walk straight out of Zoo Station. You've got lots of potential
Mm-hmm.
busking spots along Kurfürstendamm Street,
Mm-hmm.
and so it was an instant, quick half-hour busk on a train journey. And,
So what is it you like about busking?
well, what I like, it's a sort of it's a very spontaneous way to get to know the place that you've arrived in,
Mm-hmm.
and experience it in a way that you wouldn't if you're just a normal tourist. You can, and you can build up a rapport with the local people instantly. Have sometimes a negative rapport. It's not necessarily all positive, but you instantly get a feel of the city that you've arrived in
Mm-hmm.
when you get out and do that. And I think it's a very good way for young people with artistic inclinations to get to travel around and see the world.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I did it a bit myself. There was like the first time when the choir, the Wrocław Przeciw Rasizmowi, Wrocław Against Racism choir, this was around Christmas time when you were not in Wrocław at that time. And then there was like three of us. We did it on like by the Roman Catholic Cathedral on the Cathedral Islands. And Yeah, and then I got a taste of it. So I ended up doing when the others went home, and then I stayed on, and I was doing it on my own on the bridge where all those locks are. And I thought, oh, yeah, it's a bit addictive, really, this kind of
Yeah,
thing.
yeah.
Because on the one side, it's like you're putting yourself in a risky situation because you don't know how people are gonna react to this. But you can also have like, yeah, it's like the lure of the stage, kind of, isn't it? But it's more of a stage that other people don't choose. That the stage is going to be there, kind
Yeah,
of.
this is the thing. It turns wherever, whatever you're doing, street performance wise, it puts it makes a theatre. It makes a theatre or concert hall of the place where you've chosen to to do your act, and it in a way it's more um, can be more brutal, but it can also be more rewarding than
Hmm.
just having a scheduled performance in a venue with tickets and all that sort of thing. You get the audience reaction. You get an honest audience reaction, basically.
Hmm.
But,
Yeah. And it's also I'm seeing like some of the music you've been doing. I mean, there's one thing going out with an acoustic guitar and playing Hey Jude or something like that, but you're doing like all kinds of things like opera and Gilbert and Sullivan, yeah.
yeah, yeah. But but a lot of I think one of the best ways to do to do street performance probably is to actually do something that somebody else isn't doing,
Hmm.
because that way you catch the market, and you
Yeah,
also people see you and they know that you do that kind of thing. Where
yeah.
if you're doing something a bit unusual, it's a bit different to just seeing the things that people do all the time with street music.
Hmm.
Like so you know you have to be a bit more if you're going to actually make something of it, you've got to develop your act
Yeah,
to make it particularly your act rather than what everybody else is doing.
exactly. Now, so speaking about your particular act and your particular kind of self, what is your particular utopia?
Well, I think the utopia, it's I think this is I think if you're in a place where where everybody's accepted on an equal level, where everybody can make of their what they want to do. Uh, 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 everybody can present their perception of the world on an equal footing to everybody else's perception of the world. This is maybe a bit idealistic, but it's the way that utopia in itself is quite idealistic. But it's
Hmm.
where it's what you should be aiming for,
Hmm.
and we have a situation to actually we've never been in a better position than we are at the moment to actually achieve that,
Hmm.
because so in the course of our lifetimes we've had so many scientific advances, so many freedoms that we didn't have before, and and and, and so many opportunities. But I think the best thing for to create some kind of utopia is for people to actually recognize these opportunities and these advances and these things that make the world a better place,
Hmm.
and not go harping back to all the things that they want to complain about and want to find, because of course there'll always be something that's not perfect. That's the nature of life.
Hmm.
And and you have to get into a situation where you've got to say, yeah, that everybody's vision is different from what they want, and you've got to say, no, I can't have everything I want,
Hmm.
but we might be able to get something that we want.
Hmm. Yeah.
And this is I think you find it so much in the way that people are making that, because with all these advances, I'm sorry if I'm a bit um, if I'm a bit stuttery with my speech, because I do suffer from dyspraxia a bit, so I
Hmm.
can be a little bit. I might not always make sense in the way that when I'm speaking spontaneously.
Yeah, yeah.
But it's I think we've got to a situation where we've got all these opportunities and all these possibilities, but too many people want their particular idea of the world that they live in, whether we agree with them or not, or whether they fit in with our idea or not. They, they want their particular utopia is is the only way to go, and everybody else is out. And of course, this is if we carry on like this, we're never going to reach any kind of utopia.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, this is kind of why I'm one of the reasons why I'm doing this
Yeah,
series of utopian conversations, because that is then like in the plural. So find out what like different people are kind of aiming towards. And I think this can only be done in diversity. And I think there could be room for like healthy disagreement within
yeah,
this.
yeah,
So we can talk about like the issues, but the thing I'm avoiding is trying to avoid is like what Sigmund Bauman called like the retrotopia. So a kind of a
yeah.
harking back to a kind of imagined past.
And that's what I'm worried is the biggest threat to, because with all these advances, we've come so far in such a short time. If you look at history, if you
Hmm.
look at history and where we were 50 years ago, we've we've moved on. Society has moved on so far in what's possible,
Hmm.
and yet there's such a there's such a kickback reaction from, and it's not just a particular group of people from with a particular set. It's there's so much tribal politics, so much so much idealistic yearning for a past that never was, and uh, and misunderstanding of how we got to where we are, and what and I think we've got that the only way we can get out is to actually find out what we've got in common,
Hmm.
rather than what we keep on trying to find dividing us, and the as I say, the tribal politics of today, and the media and the way it all works is not helping that.
I mean,
But
what we were doing before was effectively that, because we had like yourself and me and Eloise and
yeah,
Anya, and before that Ivana, and basically we all just loved singing, and we
yeah,
didn't really talk about the big politics or how to combat racism or how do we understand this, how do we understand that.
yeah,
We were just like, it was more like praxis orientated. We want to sing,
exactly.
but we want to do it politically. We want to be gaining donations to give out to local like organizations who are doing things. But this was yeah, this was, I don't know what would call, like it was like the praxis of the local politics, so to speak, rather than like the,
Exactly.
yeah.
And I think people get so wound up in all, and this is what was so good about our little group, that we were just out there doing something about we were getting a message across about something that's universally regarded as a problem in society, i.e., racism. We were saying, yeah, we're four people from four different cultures. We're doing something. We're celebrating something. We're celebrating the diversity. We're also celebrating the fact that we've got a lot in common,
Hmm.
and that and we can celebrate our music. We can celebrate other people's music. We can and we don't, and we move forward, we do something positive, and I think that's the way to go with all these things. I mean, there's the and that we seem to be constantly fighting against a not not any particular type of politics or mindset, but just this sort of retro
Hmm.
utopia that you were that you mentioned that word. It's a good word, I think. That that put you that tried to turn the clock back, and sometimes the this to this kind of golden age that in some ways often never existed.
Hmm. And the other cool thing about what we were doing was that, I mean, to be clear, I'm not against experts. I'm not that certain person who we all both be thinking of.
Yeah.
But when it comes down to it, I mean, you are the expert with singing on the streets. I'd never really done. I mean, I had done it with choirs, but never really to
I
that.
was
Like,
surprised actually because I had you down as a crafty busker. I thought you it was. I got the impression that that was something that you must have done sometime in the past.
I've learned. The thing is, being like having like a poverty background, working class, socialized. I've had to learn in life to basically I've to realize that I'm not always going to be automatically respected.
Mm.
That there's some kind of prejudice which has come my way. So because of that, I have to like put the extra effort of really giving the impression that I really know what I'm doing. When in fact, when it comes to what we were doing, this was all we were just doing, learning on the cuff. You know, I mean, obviously, when I was walking with you, you were saying, "Don't go here, let's go there. There's a better place that we can stand there," kind of thing. But I mean, this was a grassroots a grassroots initiative that we were doing. You know, it was
Yeah.
we were learning as we were going along, even though you had more experience than anyone else with.
And then of course, but then of course, you can't always take the advice of somebody who knows, because then of course I was saying, oh, we should do Locker Sister again and again, and
Hmm.
again, because that's the big hit. And of course, it wasn't by that stage.
Hmm.
Everybody probably heard it too much.
Hmm. So, but what would if you're thinking in terms of building or working towards the utopia that you were talking about, what like skilled competences would you say come from the busker community?
Well, as I say, I think it's more the fact that you can walk into a situation and create a kind of you can offer something that maybe that people haven't seen before, that opens up their mind to possibilities in the world they weren't previously aware of, or didn't have contact with, and they can learn and they can make it. For instance, when I first started performing in Wrocław, I I got a lot of followers from the local teenagers and young people that would gather around and as if I was some kind of guru. This was interesting to me because I was doing stuff that really I didn't think they'd be at all interested in, but they wanted to know. They were sort of hungry for this diversity that they
Hmm.
probably aren't getting in their daily lives, and I was something
Hmm.
interesting that they hadn't seen before, and they wanted to practice their English as well. So it was a chance to
Hmm.
get to and I was finding that I was being mentioned on on youth websites and youth forums and things like that, from local kids who just were, oh, who is that guy? I want to know more about him. And oh, this was a big surprise for me because I'd never really been in that kind of in a situation where I thought I'd actually get I'd actually be reaching out to the young community. I
Hmm.
started touring as a busker quite late. I was about 30 when I started moving around more frequently because I just sort of confined myself to the UK before then. And
Hmm.
this was yeah, I wasn't expecting to find that the kind of stuff that I was doing was going to actually hit any kind of spots with the local with the local youth here, because in the UK it had had a completely opposite effect.
Hmm.
Getting harassed and told and laughed at by
Hmm.
the same sort of people that were really. So I think a street performer that travels and does something different in their and outside the kind of world that they, it can be more rewarding for them as a to get a bigger understanding of the world, and it can also be rewarding for the people that they reach to open their horizons a bit more as well.
I think there's an interesting thing being, yeah, this brings us an interesting point, because there is, I mean, there's a book I have, what was it called? Konkrete Utopien gegen Nationalism. It's a book in German I have. And in it, a writer called Bini Adamczak is writing about the need for for work against anti-utopianism. Because there are some who don't want that we think about better futures. They want that we think there is no alternative, as a politician once said. So that we don't have dreams, basically. So we need to take the initiative and to oppose this, to get people to talk about their dreams. So this means something come out of the expected. I find that, like, in utopian work, it is kind of, I'm trying to get people to think on this a cliche, but like think out of the box. So kind of things which are not you wouldn't necessarily think about normally, to see where your heart is thinking necessarily, or what your heart is wanting. But that's the thing then with busking, because if you're like going like along a street somewhere, you're going on like Alexanderplatz, or you're going on by the Vinek or whatever it's called, the Marktplatz in the middle of Görlitz, or wherever it is that you are here in Wrocław, you're not necessarily going to be expecting that you're going to be hearing this kind of music.
Yeah.
So then these young kids who are there, they're kind of shown it's not just about openness to the music or openness to the experience of a so-called foreigner who is singing, but it's actually the competence to be open to something which is unusual. And I think this is already like a big competence to have, like politically speaking.
Yeah, well, this is one of the things that drew me to Poland in the first place, because of course I came initially to the Basketball Festival in 1999, and that was I mean that had been started a couple of years earlier by the late Roman Plonic, who was really quite a big noise as a cultural animator in the late communist period, early big activist, and started to say to protest against with his one-man band. Then when he was free to actually get something organized, he started something like this, bringing artists from around the world to Wrocław and other cities in Poland to make this to actually make that kind of cultural connection that hadn't been there before, and so this was and I've always found that I mean that's what brought me into Poland for got me infused about actually working here and exploring it as a venue to go busking more regularly. And I think this kind of you always find this wherever in the cities where Basketball has taken place, that people are always asking what's going on. Young people coming up curiously, when are they going to be here this year? Are they cities we've never been in, that we might have only been in once 10, 15 years ago, are still asking, when are you next coming back here? When, because we were providing something that the local people weren't. I've always preferred the smaller towns that we played in to the necessarily the addition of the Basketball in Wrocław, because in Wrocław it was just something that was going on amongst lots of other things. But in places like Zielona Góra or Jeg, or all these other places that we were going to, it was the big event of the year, and
Hmm.
everybody was everybody you were in contact with was always like, "When are you coming back? When are you coming back? Oh, you're going to be here this year." And this
Hmm.
was creating an enthusiasm that I haven't seen that that I just hadn't really previously been aware of, that that there was so much enthusiasm for people who just basically were itinerant performers,
Hmm.
and uh, um, are often neglected and taken for granted. Coming to places where they're not expected to be, there's a huge enthusiasm for them.
You know, it strikes me that this is, I mean, busking is not corporate. It's not like a big business thing or even like in a big, I mean, obviously people are making money from the tips or
Trying
whatever.
to make it so.
Oh, sorry?
Some places are trying to make it so. I
Oh yeah.
can,
I mean,
I
this
can
is what
certainly
this is what I would one could maybe guess that. But it's a bit anarchist, really, isn't it? It's kind of anarchism in the sense of like self-organized by the people and not by
yeah,
hierarchy.
yeah. Ray, that's probably not a bad way of putting it. Obviously, the term anarchist has different connotations
Yeah.
to various people in the same way that utopia might, but
Yeah.
the and all these sort of concepts. But yes, there is an element of anarchy to it, which but and if Romek was the late organizer and creator of Buskabus, was anything politically, you could say he was an anarchist,
Yeah.
because that the whole way he presented his show with his one-man kazoo band that just made a whole load of noise. It wasn't great to listen to musically. It was an incredible musical achievement that it was doing, but it was it was saying, look, here I am. I'm challenging society with this
Hmm.
big noise. Make of it what you will,
Hmm.
and that was that was sort of like a perfect musical definition of anarchy.
Hmm. The reason why I thought that, because what you were saying kind of reminded me of like the orange, what was it called? The Orange Revolution in Wrocław, you know, where you're like largely
Yes,
students and
well,
anarchist students were being dressed up in orange with the like as dwarves, and in the
yeah.
1980s going like for
Well,
these happenings or just going for
Romet
walks.
was quite a part of that as well,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
and and Mayo, who was one of the main creators and organizers of the Orange Alternative. I think he's a friend of mine, and he was supporting a lot of the early basketball festivals. So
Hmm.
was actually living in the house of some of his colleagues for the first few years that I was in Wrocław. So
Hmm.
it was a yeah, it was yeah, it's very much linked to all of that, and it was a new way of protesting, because
Hmm.
that against in an oppressive situation, is instead of actually challenging in a confrontational way, throwing stones or shouting. It was saying, look, we're actually funny, jolly people. We're doing something.
Hmm.
We're doing something to make you laugh and entertain you, rather
Hmm.
than uh, uh, rather than confront you. And this was a successful way of protest, and a very
Hmm.
anarchic way of protest, and it did its job in bringing down the system in a way that might have not been so easy if they'd been more confrontational.
I mean, there is the
Supported it.
chant that is often done in certain protests, like "Whose streets? Our streets," and it's kind of like with
Mm,
busking is kind of reclaiming the streets.
yeah, yeah. That's. I mean, it's all to do with that sort of thing. But I find that I mean, I try not to be because I because of my of of my concerns about tribal politics and things like
Yeah.
that, I try not to associate myself too much with things that are overtly uh, um, politically organized.
Hmm.
But I think the best, but I think this is because I think politics is generally too tribal. But I think this is when communities find something that they can like um, reclaiming the streets sort of thing. You can find on slogans like that.
Hmm.
You are is basically what any decent person could back
Hmm.
without all. So I think often a lot of things that most people want to get involved in and what I would support are often hijacked by some organization or thing that they can't quite. They might have some sympathy for, but they can't quite embrace the whole the whole thing. And I think there's they want that having situations where there's no feeling that that there's some organization controlling the message.
Hmm.
I think it opens many more people up to getting involved.
Hmm. Right, so Philip, we've got to something like half an hour now, and the thing is, I always start doing these utopian conversation, and after like 5-10 minutes, I thought, oh, when did we start again? I didn't make a note of this time, but I'm guessing we're at something like half an hour now, so I think we can be making come to the end of this. With regards to like Busker Bus, has it been announced where it will be taking place this year?
We all touch wood because I mean we never know what's going to happen in these current
Hmm.
circumstances. All seems to be in motion for the end of August as usual.
Hmm.
I haven't got the exact dates right in
Yeah.
front of me, but you can check out
Yeah,
on the
yeah,
website. And it's the I think we will be performing in the three cities that we normally perform in: Wrocław, Zielonogóra, and Krotoshin. I hope it will all take place as
yeah,
planned.
yeah,
Uh, uh, um, but as I say, who can tell what might suddenly happen? But I think we're proceeding as if everything's going to happen. We've already got several artists being announced on the website that are coming and on the Facebook page. So I hopefully everything's going to go as it did last year because we had no idea it was going to happen last year,
yeah.
but we kept faith and it happened. So hopefully it'll be the same this year as well.
Well, we kept faith and it happened is a good thing to have
Yeah,
for you for
that,
Utopia. What I'll do is I'll put a link in the description in this YouTube video or in Instagram or LinkedIn or whatever, so you can to that if you want to experience like the praxis of busking Utopia in person. So thank you very much, Philip. It's been a pleasure. It always is a pleasure to speak with you.
my
And
pleasure.
I'm going to wish everyone a good day. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel.
Yeah,
Okay, bye.
take care.
Right. Oh no, I press stop.